Buddy, today we're going to be talking about cultural values. And what are cultural values? Cultural values are things that different cultures value. And if you have a biracial child, it's very important for you to realize that your child is probably going to automatically absorb the values that the dominant culture has. So if they are black and white, they're automatically going to absorb white cultural values, but you have to intentionally teach them black cultural values. So that parent has to be involved in teaching culture and both the subtle things and the not so subtle things about that culture. So, thinking about cultural values, what are they? There are thousands of them. I'm going to talk about 9 just to get the juices flowing, but you could begin to think about others too that are important to you that you definitely want to pass on to your kids. So, the first one I'm going to talk about is food and feasting. So, my husband is Jamaican, and so my mother in law, in Jamaica, every Christmas time, she begins to cook like 3 weeks before Christmas, even a month. And she is making many different meats. She's making goat and fish and lamb and beef and just so many different meats and side dishes and desserts, of course, Jamaican rum cake, and other different things. And the reason is that so that everybody in the community that they know, their friends, can just stop by anytime during the Christmas season and get a plate of food. And it just is part of the festivity. But even day to day, food and how it tastes and how it is prepared and the different spices is very important in Jamaican culture. And so my husband has started cooking on Saturdays just to get the kids used to does it take to make this Jamaican meal and get their palates used to the spices. So food and feasting. Number 2, dignity. In Black culture and a lot of non-white cultures, how you look in public, your hair, your clothes, how you present yourself is very important. And also how you address elders. In many cultures, you use the last name, Mrs. Doily, or maybe a Miss Nicole, but you don't call somebody who's older than you by their first name, and that all speaks to dignity. What about the outdoors and appreciating nature? I have found that hiking and camping and exploring the woods are things that a lot of white people value that a lot of non-white people don't value as much. Church attendance. Right now, in America, Black people have the highest rate of church attendance than any other people group. How important is church attendance in your family? Education. Many cultures place a high value on education. A lot of African and Indians and Asians grew up with the mantra, education is the way out of poverty. And so it would be very difficult for them to consider allowing their children to not go to college and even to not go to graduate school. Um, what about autonomy and independence? I have found that teaching kids to be autonomous is sometimes more highly valued in white culture than in a lot of non-white cultures. A lot of non-white cultures tend to be more prescriptive. They decide what their kids are going to wear, especially when they're little. They are more hands-on in decision making in terms of what college they're going to go to and what they're going to major in, and getting them out of the house and on their own completely by the time they're 18 is emphasized less in a lot of non-white cultures. And then there's time. So in my house, of course, during the week, school and work, you're supposed to get out of the house and be on time, absolutely. But on the weekends, particularly my husband slips into more laid back island mode. And if you want us over by 6, it might be 6:30. We're just not going to rush it. That's just something that our family values, although we'll try to also be respectful of your time. But anyway, and then there's family. It takes a village to raise a child is an African proverb. The nuclear family is a Western idea, and other cultures certainly value family just as much, but they define family differently. And lastly, what you think, and does thinking have to be linear and rational, or can it also be intuitive? And your emotions, can you be expressive and emotional even if it makes somebody uncomfortable? Or is politeness valued even over honesty? So there are so many different cultural values, beauty and music and traditions and the arts and folklore. In the next video, I'm going to talk about folklore and a story that's very dear to me. But let me leave you with this. If your children just absorbs the values of the dominant culture, he or she will not be comfortable around the minority culture. And that's really sad because that's half of who they are. All right, I'll see you next time.